Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat, Bitesize. My name is Dylan.
Ooh, and my name is Hayden, and you're joining us on a very special episode. Dylan, would you like to tell our listeners why it's a very special episode today?
Well, guys, I've got some news. We are sponsored. This episode is sponsored, and we are sponsored by Toxic Schools. Now, we've promised between ourselves we won't let it affect our work, okay? But we do have a sponsorship, Toxic Schools. Shout out to all those toxic schools out there. That's it, Hayden. That's all they wanted us to say. So should we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about, we've actually come together and we've got a nice top 5 list of things that you can do in your school to improve well-being. It's something we talk about a lot in our podcast, and today we just wanted to go into a little bit more detail. So Dylan, should we start off with our list and go straight into number 1?
Let's go straight into number 1, shall we? Number 1, be a boss at work who doesn't remotely listen to your staff, because at the end of the day, Hayden, you are above them, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. What does the word boss mean? If not that, okay?
If not that, yeah.
They're your subordinates. So as a boss, what you need to do is ensure that they know, your staff know that you are above them and you're not accountable to anything, okay?
Absolutely.
They are, but you're not.
Yeah,
all right?
and I think really importantly on this point is, if you're going to be in charge of someone, whether they're a professional or not and have qualifications and are really good at what they do and are actually at the chalk face delivering the actual thing that the school has been built for, that's irrelevant, because you have a suit and tie on and you have your own office. And as soon as you have your own office in a school, your word is sacrosanct. So if your staff listen to something you say and introduce and they say, oh, that's not quite working for me, they're lying. They're doing it just for attention. Don't listen.
It's about respect, isn't it? I had a leader once told me in a training course that if you don't make your staff cry, at least one of your staff members cry at least once per week, they don't respect you. And if they don't respect you, they're not going to teach the kids well. So it's a bit of a, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It all comes together.
It's trickled down as well, because if you want your staff to have this kind of dynamic with the children where they are superior to them and they don't listen to them, and you want to embed this culture of actually I'm in charge of you, that needs to come from the top down. So that starts with the people in charge of the school. So just to summarize, point 1, how are you going to increase well-being? Well, you're going to make sure your staff know who's in charge and not care remotely what they think about decisions you make.
Fantastic stuff. So our second point on our list about improving well-being in your school is to implement forced well-being sessions. Mandatory. Okay, everyone has to go.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think what's really obvious here, I don't know why we're really wasting time saying this, Hayden, because it's in the name, well-being. So, if as a school you organize, and this is the key part of these kind of sessions, they have to happen in time where teachers have free, not learning time. I'm talking lunchtime, I'm talking after school, and they have to attend, okay? You're going to put it as part of directed time? Don't worry about that, because it's forced well-being. So, Hayden, what are some of the things that we can do with our staff to make sure they feel better?
Well, I've got an anecdote for you, an example of this. I've done this before in one of my schools. We implemented yoga on a Thursday after school. It was from 3:30 till 4:30, and it was so funny because one of the teachers, I'd made them cry in the previous week, so they respected me now. They came up to me and they said, that's cool, I'd love to do some yoga. My well-being is terrible at this school. And I was like, stop. And then they asked if they didn't have to do the marking that they would have been doing in that hour. And we all, honestly, unanimously, everyone looked at them and we all laughed. It was so funny.
I know.
Of course you do. Of course they do.
Of course they have to. They have to do it. Okay? Because, look, it goes back to what we said in the first point. It's all about respect. If you're feeling stressed because you can't get your marking done, it's fine. Don't do it at that moment. Go and do some yoga instead. And then afterwards, you feel better, you could do your marking.
Exactly. So there we are. Forced well-being sessions. It goes a long way.
If that doesn't work, just get them some pizza. There's nothing wrong with that. And I've never, ever seen anyone eat pizza and be sad about it. So that's
I'll tell you what, I've never seen anyone eat pizza whilst doing yoga. Double up your well-being.
Fantastic. You heard it here first. Tip 3. I want you to put yourselves in the shoes of a teacher. Okay. You have directed time, and that is time where in your contract, that is where you can be told what to do. So as leaders, as school leaders in a school where we want to increase well-being and make it better, what you need to do is make sure teachers still retain some kind of purpose. And what's that link to directed time, you might be thinking? Well, here's the top tip. Make sure your directed time only includes half the job. And I mean at most, because
Mm.
teachers need to make sure that when they finish the job at school, they get to go home and carry on doing it, because that's what's going to make their lives filled with purpose. That's what's going to make themselves feel better, isn't it, Hayden?
Exactly. Well, actually, it's very interesting you said this, because very recently the Teacher Wellbeing Index released some new data.
Mm,
And comparing 2022 and 2023, we can
mm,
actually see that wellbeing is getting worse. Teachers are becoming less and less happy in
mm.
this job. And I think that is because, well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Teachers, what do they love? What do teachers love doing?
Working.
They love working. They love working. That is the best part of the job. And what are they doing at home if they're not working? Sad. Okay?
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do as a boss
Yeah.
to your staff that respect you
Yeah.
is say, yeah, we've got directed time, but I'm aware of your needs outside of school. You know, I'm not just a boss here. I'm a boss at home as well for you. And what I can do is take away all of those
Mm,
jobs from directed time and say, do
mm.
them at home.
Do them at home instead.
Do them at
Do
home.
them at home. Because honestly, you could be spending time with your family instead. And I think as a boss, we have a duty to ensure that that doesn't happen. So you want to boost well-being, just make them do work at home. They will be really, really grateful.
Yeah, fantastic, Dylan. Thank you. On to tip number 4. Now, this is one of my absolute favorites, because we were just talking about how teachers love to
Work!
They love to work. So there's nothing better for them to get their teeth stuck into than a change in curriculum. And now the best way to do this is not to wait for an appropriate sort of time where, you know, there's nothing going on and, oh, we better change this one thing. No, English, scrap it tomorrow. Tell them all that next term, English is being replanned. Here's the new unit, but make sure it's not quite a full unit and they have to do loads and loads of extra work.
Yeah.
And the best bit is, Dylan, you know, you might be thinking, all right, fair enough. I've tried that. It sort of works. Next term, history, boom, gone.
Yep.
Geography, next term, bam, we're redoing it. Okay.
Because the last thing we want, Hayden, is for teachers to be resting on their laurels. Okay. No. And if something's working in a school, well, that's just a facade. Nothing's ever working. Okay. Make sure nothing is ever working in a school. You're only one change away from having the best school ever. And just make sure that not only is it one change away, if you're scrapping English and making them replan everything from scratch, why not scrap maths as well? And while you're at it, take a look at your afternoon curriculum, because listen, at the end of the day, what are teachers if not workhorses who we have to make feel absolutely terrible and do all of the work for us? What do you think?
Amen. And do you know what I have noticed from my experience as a school leader is after about a year, 2 years at absolute most of using a scheme, once everyone's just about got their head around it, people get lazy. They stop doing it properly. So you've got to scrap it. Just as we're right there at the apex, bam, gone. Here's a new thing that does the same thing, but you've got to replan.
Do you know why as well? And I want to get this across to our listeners, because they need to know this. It's because we answer to Ofsted. Okay, so if you work in a school where locally a school local to you has also had Ofsted and had a good outcome, then there's only one thing to do, Hayden, and that's to completely scrap what you do and copy what they do.
Them. Yeah,
copy them. And again, it doesn't matter what you do, irrelevant, because they got a good or outstanding. So I think as good leaders in good schools where we really value well-being, we completely scrap everything we've done and just copy that school as best we can.
Amazing. Dylan, I think we need to move on. Before we go to our last point, our number 5 tip, can we do some honorable mentions, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it, because, you know, there's just always something else we can do.
Yeah, these are like quick fire tips. So if you're a leader and you're looking to implement something tomorrow and you've already scrapped English, here's something else you can do really, really quick. So I'll do one, you do one, Dylan, okay?
Let's do it.
Here's my first one. Teachers don't need desks or chairs. Get rid of them. Scrap them. What are they for? How many times have you walked into a teacher's classroom, they've been sat there on that chair? Get up, you lazy tyke. Go do your job. You know, get rid of them.
It's going to boost exercise. It's going to boost their wealth and their well-being. Their wealth, because they'll be more active. It's better.
Their wealth and their well-being will be improved by these things.
Health is wealth. Therefore, get rid of the desk. Don't need a desk.
They'll be pleased.
Next one, Hayden. This is vital. This is vital because it's 2 prongs here. Okay, make sure you go around at the end of school. And you see your staff working to the bone because they respect you. They would never let you down because you've made them feel like rubbish. They respect you. They're working to the bone. It's getting late and you go, oh, what are you doing? Why don't you go home? Why don't you just go home? Tell them to go home because
Mm.
they've got stuff to do at home. They've got some work to do for you. And if they remotely think about turning around and saying, if they even dare to answer you back and say, "Oh, I've got to do some marking that is in the policy, and I've got 90 books to get through because you've made the marking," but just ignore them.
Yeah.
Repeat the phrase "go home," and then check tomorrow that they did actually get that marking done still.
It works. It works. It happened to me once. I was sat there marking 4:30. I said, "Oh, will I still have to mark these then?" And they went, "Yes." And I think, thank God, I can do this at home now, where I love doing more work. It was brilliant. Honestly,
Fantastic.
revolutionary.
What's the next one, Aidan? Next honourable mention.
Next one is, this is a great one. So you've got to make sure that your staff are not only delivering all of the curriculum in all of the subjects, but they have to be a specialist in a subject as well and lead that subject for the grand total of 0 extra pay, because it's about the love of the job, isn't it, Dylan?
But yeah, and I've got to just clarify as well. I know you said about no extra pay, obviously, because why would we?
No.
But it's really important actually for this wellbeing tip that you also don't give them any time in the school day. You can't give them either. That's often overlooked. Often staff might be given a bit of time to do something. Don't do it. Don't give them any time.
You know what the synergy is for this tip here? If you really want to up your game with this, once they've got to terms with being given geography and they've got to lead it for the school, hit them with the PE.
Yeah.
With the PE as well.
And the further apart the subjects are linked to each other, the better, because you're widening their skill set. You're doing them a favour. Okay?
We don't want to de-skill staff.
Last 2 honourable mentions. So last one from me, save yourself time. It's important to look after yourself. Okay. So when it comes to residential that's overnight, don't ask them if they want to come. Just book them in immediately. Okay. Assume they'll come. That way they're already booked in. They're not going to put up a fuss because they respect you. Remember, step 1, they respect you. You're going to build up on all of this to have good well-being. Staff respect you. Just book them in. They have small children at home. That's fine. They won't want to be with them anyway. Why would they want to spend time with their small children and their family when they could be with their school family and 30 children an hour away at a residential?
You're so good at this, Dylan. Right, last tip, really quick one. So your well-being is important too as a leader. Don't forget about yourself, okay? So when staff leave, that can cause a big job for you, can't it? Like, I've got to recruit someone. No, you don't. You don't have to recruit anyone. You just give it to someone that already has a job. And you don't take away their job. Otherwise, you'd have to find a new person to do that role. So when someone leaves, give their entire role to someone else and tell them to get on with it.
Fantastic. So there are honourable mentions. Make sure you implement those. But guys, this is a step-by-step guide. You have to do everything from step 1. And the final point, last thing, just to fulfill our sponsorship duties, just remind you guys that this episode is sponsored by Toxic Schools. Last tip, number 1. The best thing you can do to boost well-being and make your staff feel absolutely amazing day to day is to criticize every single thing they do and make sure that they never, ever, ever feel like they're doing a good job. Because what does that do, Hayden? It breeds complacency. And that is the last thing you want for well-being.
We like to use something called the negative sandwich. However, we've slightly tweaked it, haven't we? We've taken out the hand. We've taken out the bit in the middle. What you need to do is start with something negative, because they need to know, firstly, remember, you're the boss. They're your subordinate. They're below you. They don't do a very good job, or they'd be in your shoes, wouldn't they? No. So you tell them something bad about the lesson. You follow that up with something bad, just not as bad. Okay, so they're like, okay, the first thing was terrible, and then you just wrap up that sandwich, get that second bit of bread, and you just tell them something that makes them cry. It's got to be terrible, something that absolutely obliterates every part of their essence and soul that went into creating these lessons 9 p.m. the night before. That's how you breed good well-being.
And this is where I just want to be real with people now. This is where if you're really, really passionate about making sure well-being is good in your school, it's not easy to make someone cry. Okay, it's something you have to practice years and years and years. So in order to get more practice in making sure that your feedback is that horrible to professionals that they literally want to cry, you have to observe them every single day. You have to observe them as much as you possibly can, because then not only are you getting better at giving feedback, which makes them feel awful, which is great for well-being, you are also then getting to see how bad they are. Because like I said, there is always something you can improve. Nothing is ever good. And that's where we're going to start making our teachers feel better.
Yeah. So there we are. There's our top 5 tips on improving well-being in your school starting tomorrow, guys. Let us write into us. Let us know what's the first thing you've implemented. And I tell you what, there are bonus points if you implement them all at the same time. That is going to have the biggest impact to your school.
guys, see you next time, where we unfortunately will run out of sponsorship.